Okay, so we're starting the white paper session. Quite happy to say that we've now progressed significantly with this white paper, and we trust this first version is complete and it's in very good shape. So just revising what I said on the keynote a little bit earlier on the opening of the conference. The CBC is really leveraging design tech, or BIM, Build Information Modeling, and adding these new layers of technologies that are emerging because of the use of blockchain. So we investigating the management technologies, and this would mainly be, we can see management tech from a very kind of simple point of view as the build information modeling techniques and protocols we've been putting in place, or the industry has been putting in place to further advance design technologies like CAD systems. So what I refer to management tech here is the BIM layer on the top of CAD systems, but also other management technologies that we are seeing coming to life in the last few years. And then we have the fintech, which is in essence blockchain and tokenization economy, or tokenized economies, and the many other things that we can do, not only with blockchain, but with financial automation in general, the legal tech and the gov tech. So we're using this layering of technologies to leverage BIM and a design tech to also inform how we develop our white papers. So so the roadmap is really following the same sequencing. We started with a value proposition. This was back in 2018. And we shared this with interested parties and stakeholders, and some joined the CBC as members, some became strategic partners. And we're very fortunate to have a very relevant, very strong team sharing the same vision. And our first white paper was initiated in 2019. And we believe now this is concluded, but now we also have initiated our Build Information Modeling and Management and Computer-Supported Collaborative Design white paper. The title is not fixed yet. We're seeing how we're going to approach the problematics of BIM and blockchain, but this is investigating how BIM can further be automated using things like blockchain and federated learning. And into 2021, we expect to develop a white paper on IoT and operations and blockchain. So this resonates what Professor Philip Treleaven said a little bit earlier in relation to universal object identifiers and how we can create these persistent links with the data we are creating and how this informs the digital twin. So the workflow we have for the white papers and for creating this new knowledge is to produce the white paper with the steering committee of the consortium. And this is then presented as evidence in the parliament through the APPGs. And we are collaborating closely with the Big Innovation Center and with our colleagues in the parliament. And once we receive this feedback, we'll then start our work on the yellow paper and the green paper. And eventually we want to present this in the European Parliament and other institutions or government organizations to see how this can be integrated with current legislation at a national level, but also at the EU level. So a timeline, the idea is to have this sequence, this cascading number of events. So white paper, when the white paper is published, we also start to investigate a potential project technology project that can be hosted by the CBC. And then this informs the yellow paper, and the year after that, it informs the green paper. So just for clarity, the yellow paper is the technical paper coming out of the white paper. So we add a level of definition there, a level of detail that is greater than the white paper. And then we see how this have an impact, all this have an impact on the sustainability aspects and sustainability strategy of the application of that technology. So this cascading effect of the generation of the papers also lead to the consolidation of technology projects. So we are in 2020 now. We had a little bit of delay. The white paper for 2020 was supposed to be presented back in July, but of course we had to postpone this to today because of the pandemic. But we are working to get back to schedule, and hopefully by the CBC conference 2021, we will have defined our first open source technology project emerging from the first white paper, and also publishing our second white paper. So the idea is that as we learn more about what the applications of blockchain are in the sector, in the construction sector, we also start to develop proof of concepts. So we have developed a proof of concept for handling finances, or automating some cash flow processes within the BIM environment. We've been using BIM 360 and Autodesk Forge, but we are adapting this proof of concept also for Bentley systems for the iModel environment. And then we want to put SDKs, APIs, and everything else we need to put in place. So players in the industry and also researchers in academia and other contributors can take stake and carry on developing this proof of concept. Of course, we'll repeat this exercise for all the different tiers we've been discussing. So if you are interested in contributing to white papers, and if you are interested in the technology open source projects, please get in touch. We are very open and neutral platform. We are at the Bartlett School of Architecture, but at UCL to be more precise. So the Bartlett collaborates with a number of with all faculties at UCL if necessary. So if you have an interest in being part of the hackathons, or contributing to the code base, or contribute to the definition of the white papers, get involved. You can go to constructionblockchain.org and contact us. You can also email admin@constructionblockchain.org, and then we can discuss further and see how you can join the team. So this is an overview of what the CBC is doing in relation to the white papers. I would invite now Gavin Johnson, who is a member of our steering committee, to go through the white paper itself. So Gavin has been pretty much leading, in a way, this white paper, because we had a team, but Gavin just took the lead, and he did a ridiculous amount of work on this white paper together with Brittany. Of course, we all contributed. Daria also was quite instrumental in doing a peer review on the paper. But I think Gavin is the person, the right person to elaborate on what we've been up to in the last year. Thank you.
We hope. Okay, can I forgive my naivety?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you click share. Yeah, and then if you click play.
Play.
Yeah, it's just the presentation mode of PowerPoint.
Oh, right. Yeah, right, I see.
Yeah, just
forgive me, I'm not super.
It's just on the bottom. Yeah, it's like on the bottom.
Yeah.
There you go. Perfect.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Thank you, Abel, for that introduction. This paper, I suppose, if I can just jump right in, has been a work in progress. Some of you may recall our presentation last year in Paris, and obviously COVID has not helped the progress and completion of this paper, but I think we're there now, which is very exciting. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the paper, what we've done in the intervening period. I'm not going to rehash our presentation from Paris. I don't think that's very helpful, but I will update what we've been up to and talk a little bit about the paper. If I can figure out how to share the paper, you can all have a quick look as well. So just a couple of slides from me on this paper, not getting too much detail, but I suppose since Paris last year, we went back to the paper and we had some great feedback, and we thought very carefully about what this paper should address. And I think what's clear is that with Abel and Eleni and Brittany and myself, and Richard and Leo, there's a great wealth of knowledge and perhaps too much knowledge. And so we tried to refocus the paper on the core message. What is it we're trying to articulate? What problem are we trying to address? And so we stripped the paper back just to focus on cash flow. You may recall there was a discussion, consideration about procurement, which of course is a cash or a cash flow, or more generally a financing problem. But just peeled it right back to focus on the core. So what you will find when you see this paper is a much more focused paper. It's obviously shorter. And we're really trying to address and produce a framework within which a cash flow solution for a construction project could be delivered. So here I just mentioned there's a couple of bullet points. We've refined it, as I say, just to focus on the cash flow issue and the issues around that, particularly from my perspective as a construction disputes lawyer, refining the legal framework, the financial structures, as I mentioned, and then also trying to draw out the salient points, the summaries. You know, we all are pressured and under a great deal of time pressure for reading. So being able to draw out those bullet points just to make the salient points. So if you've only got a couple of minutes, you could read a chapter summary pretty quickly and then have a good feel for what it's talking about. So what is the first paper? Just to recap, it is focused on cash flow. As I jokingly allude to here, if cash is king, cash flow is God. And the importance of cash flow, and I don't mean cash, I mean cash flow, so money moving through a construction project, cannot be underestimated. Money disputes are the greatest source of construction disputes. There is a great deal of game playing. There is a great deal of gamesmanship within that. There is a great deal of ambiguity, and you might think, why is there ambiguity when all of this is dictated by acts of parliament? But even within those rules, there is space and fluidity for, and I don't want to blame anyone in particular, but for parties within that construction project structure to maybe not pay quite on time, or maybe withhold inappropriately. And this creates a number of problems down that supply chain, and it causes what I call a micro recession certainly in subcontractors or suppliers who are not able to withstand cash flow restrictions. So credit tightening, effectively, you cause a recession and you put a subcontractor out of business. And it's not restricted solely to subcontractors. Of course, over the last year, there's been 2 or 3 notable contractor insolvencies. And if we can keep money moving through that supply chain, in theory anyway, economic theory, we can avoid that sort of problem. So The nub of this paper really is around the solution frameworks, I think, and I'll look at the paper in a moment. But what are we trying to do? We're trying to articulate a framework within which a solution can be made. We're trying to set out not rules, but a structure, guidelines, things that as a developer or as somebody with a bright idea or for a solution in this space can look at and say, okay, these are the issues I need to address. I need to be mindful of the legal payment framework mechanisms. I need to be mindful of who is in the supply chain. I need to be mindful of the financing structure in the supply chain, the interrelationships between the parties. And although we've removed procurement from this paper, if I recall, the plan is to deal with procurement in a later paper. There is, of course, structure. So who pays who? Who's involved with who? Who has to approve payments between whom? And we also touch on a few other bits and pieces that are important to any type of sort of technological transformation project anyway, is how do you get this adopted? It's all well and good having a brilliant idea, but if no one uses it, so what? And so it's a few, I suppose, practical considerations to be mindful of. So that was just a couple of slides to introduce. If somebody can just tell me, do I pause sharing now or share something else?
You can pause sharing. I think there should be a red button or something.
Stop sharing, yes, okay. Forgive my naivety. And if I share something else, this is where my technology is beginning to be challenged. Okay, can everybody see the paper, the white paper?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so sorry, if I can just resize it so I can see it, that would be helpful. So big fanfare of trumpets, if you can imagine that playing in the background. Sorry, Leo, I should have primed you for that. Here we are, blockchain and construction cashflow. This is what I'm calling a preprint copy. I think it will be officially published, and Leo can correct me if I'm wrong, today.
Yes, we're going to send this out to all attendees momentarily. Yeah.
Fantastic! Look at that service on time. So here we are. So I'm not going to read through this. It is 60 pages long. Now there are some sort of four or five, I suppose, key chapters. There are some obviously appendices and things as well, but just to give you a brief flavour of what the paper looks like. The wonderful Richard Saxon there. I think he's joining us later for a talk. If I just skip down. So there's, I suppose, 5 key chapters. So the first chapter is really looking at financing construction, and this is to contextualize the construction industry and where blockchain as a cash flow solution can come into play. So construction is a huge industry, accounts for, I don't know, 6-7% of GDP. That's construction alone, before you consider the built environment, which probably accounts for nearer to 20 to 25%, something like that. So this is a significant size, and this is in the UK alone, and in the US, you know, even larger. You can see some of the numbers there. In the US, up to $600 billion per annum, which is a staggering amount of money invested in people building stuff. And given the amount of money at stake, you can begin to understand why money is such a critical issue and why it causes, from my perspective as a disputes lawyer, so many problems. So a little bit of context. And then Abel also has set out very helpfully in the second chapter some of the principles behind blockchain. And it's important to understand what blockchain can do as well as what it cannot do. Because if you're going to develop any solution, obviously you need to know the limits of its capabilities. And so Abel's very helpfully set out some of the fundamentals and how blockchain can be applied. I won't go into that in too much detail. That will be, Abel would be a much better place to talk about that. So then we start looking at the application of blockchain as a technology to various sectors. And later today, there's another presentation on the application to the legal space. But here we just look at, I suppose, more broadly, how blockchain has been applied. And very crudely, blockchain, perhaps because of its transactional nature, or certainly that's how it's interpreted to be, has been primarily applied in finance, because we think of transactions. So you might think about Bitcoin and people paying money. At a higher level, it's not really about money, it's about value. And that's very different conceptually from exchanging Bitcoins for payment of goods and services. But it's important that we have the context for the technology. And then we come to, I suppose, chapter 4, which is really the core of this paper, and it's trying to understand the application of blockchain to the construction industry. Now, in the UK, in particular, construction is a very unique area. It has its own acts of parliament. Now, when a particular area gets its own acts of parliament, it's important. Parliament has felt sufficiently moved that it needs to do something about it. It also suggests there's a problem that needs to be addressed that isn't comfortably addressed either by the people working in that sector or case law as it evolves. So in the UK, there's a couple of acts of parliament. And I'm sure many of you will be well aware of the Construction Act back in 1996 now, so that's pushing 25 years old. And that was brought in following a review by, I want to say Jackson, but my knowledge escapes me at that point, of issues in the sector. And this came out of, I suppose, the late 80s, early 90s, when there was effectively a recession. Lots of smaller construction companies, subcontractors suffered. And the principal reason for that was either restriction of credit or restriction of payment, which drove a lot of insolvencies. And as any first-year economist certainly will know will know better than I, recessions are about restrictions in credit. And that's really what drove a lot of the reform and the need for Parliament to intervene and set out, let's say, more sensible mechanisms to ensure payments get made, and it prevents that sort of credit tightening or recessive effect in the construction supply chain, especially so given its importance to the economy as a whole and society as a whole. The built environment does underpin fundamentally everything we do. We all interact with the built environment every day, so that's how important is the homes we live in, the places we work. Even this, there's an infrastructure behind this Zoom transmission that is a function of the construction sector. So, in chapter 4, I set out effectively what you need to worry about if you're going to define some sort of blockchain solution for payment. This is the thing. These are the things that you need to comply with. These are legal requirements. You must be able to make an application for payment. You must be able to issue a withholding notice, or pay less notice as it's called now, and you must be able to make payment on time if you're not going to withhold. So you must comply with these timeframes and these events. The situation in America, and unfortunately Britain has not been able to join us, the situation in America is driven more by, I understand, state law and the common law in those states. But very broadly, there are expectations around how you pay and when you pay, although it's not set out in a statute as it is here. So moving on into more detailed considerations of what a solution could do or what it should be able to do. Yes, it should be able to automate payments with fairly minimal interaction. Yes, there will still always be a need for somebody to send an invoice. Yes, somebody will need to approve that, or the QS or the project manager, whomever it may be in your particular project, must be able to approve it. Issues around withholding and so on must of course all be addressed. But once you've done the sort of manual input, then you can leave it to the system to worry about payment and paying on time, paying the right amount on time. So we think about some of the things that we need to deal with, or the benefits rather. And yes, you can automate payments. Payments should be less subject to, let's say, arbitrary withholding or failure to pay, or certainly failure to pay on time. Quite how you would structure this, of course, is open to the developer. There are, let's say, considerations certainly still around cryptocurrencies, which I don't really want to talk about, but it's, when you say blockchain, it kind of goes hand in glove with some form of cryptocurrency. There are issues around that from a legal perspective, certainly from a taxation perspective, to be mindful of. But I do think there are ways around that if you're looking at digitized or digitizing money. But it's something to be mindful of. So we're talking about acceleration of payment, of course, because it's all an automated system, and many of us probably use, oh, I don't know, Sage or QuickBooks or Xero or any one of the myriad of online accounting software platforms now. Obviously, all your transactions are recorded because it's on a blockchain, distributed ledger. And so in theory, it should make your accounting easier and automate it. It should simplify your project management and project administration because it should require less manual input from a project manager. Yes, the old adage, garbage in, garbage out. There is obviously a risk of somebody typing the wrong number, whatever it may be, but the more automated we can make it, the less likely errors will be. And we go into a lot more detail around how you can deal with certain specific elements, and I don't really want to pick up on these too much because it can get into quite a complex discussion, but obviously in construction projects we might think about a variation, so you want to do something different. Obviously that has a cost impact. Maybe there's a delay event and time has to be changed, or the program has to be changed, and that in and of itself will also impact I forget what it's called now, how preliminaries, that's what I'm looking for, will also affect the preliminaries because you're there on site for longer, and so there's increased costs. Aside from the fact, obviously, a delay in completion of the project will cause problems. That may lead into issues of liquidated damages, depending on whose fault all of that is. And then invariably, if somebody doesn't like that situation, then dispute can break out. So we cover that in I think, quite some detail, but I think it's accessible detail. And it's certainly things that you would need to think about if you're developing this type of solution. And lastly, in this section, and probably the most important part is the solution requirements. And this is where we try and set out, in not too many bullet points, the fundamental requirements that you will need to think about, you will need to consider, and that you'll need to either address or answer, or certainly have a credible answer for, in any solution that you develop. And we can talk about a variety of, I suppose, interacting elements. And yes, we can talk about sort of cash flow and that sort of blockchain structure and allowing for exchanges of value, but that has to work within the context of the real world. And I spoke about the Construction Act a few moments ago, but you can also overlay that with a variety of financial regulations. You are dealing with money, you're dealing with a financial system. So you would need to think, well, do I need to worry about anti-money laundering regulations? And if you're providing a blockchain, whilst you may not be providing finance behind that, could it be the case that you're acting as a credit provider? I don't know, I'm not a finance lawyer, but there is certainly scope for that to be investigated. And then even before you get to that, if you're talking about exchanges of value, what is it you're exchanging across a blockchain? I mentioned cryptocurrencies earlier, but what is it you're actually exchanging? If you're just exchanging tokens, what do those tokens represent? If those tokens are securities, then you've got another problem, and you need to be registered with the FCA to be able to do that, because it's now a security offering. But these are issues that you do need to work through. You need to be aware of, and you need to find and identify credible answers for. come and talk to us, I should say, and we'll help, of course. So just to finish off, so I'm realizing I'm probably going on a little bit too long. In the recommendation, so the last section, last chapter, chapter 5, we summarize all of the above, the key issues that you will need to think about and work through for any solution. We mentioned the legal regime, financial regulations, how you can engage with stakeholders across the supply chain. Ultimately, if nobody adopts it, what was the point in developing it in the first place? If it's not easy to use, you'll find resistance. People, of course, when it comes to transformation projects, worry about their jobs. You know, will I be replaced by a robot this time next year? Well, no. I would suggest this is a platform, or would be a platform in my view, to facilitate better accounting, better cash flow, and money management. And then very helpfully set out a roadmap. Again, any project obviously must have, I suppose, identified, maybe you call them smart objectives, to deliver a solution. So we're trying to help with that here. And that's it. And then we get into some about the authors, so where our contributions are, and the references at the end, if there is further reading you wish to do. Every quote and so on has been referenced accordingly. Enjoy. And then there's a bit more information at the back, which I won't go into.